The first rule to training your dog, use treats. The second rule to training your dog, use treats with strategy. What's up guys, I'm Jenna with Dog Liaison Training, your evidence-based trainer to help you better communicate with your dog. Today we're talking about reinforcement, specifically food reinforcement. So all of the techniques that I'm going to give you today absolutely can apply to affection. They can be applied to dog toys. We're going to be talking about in terms of food today because that's the easiest reinforcer and it's the most effective. Keep watching to find out this strategy and how you can implement it today. So the first thing you need to note about this activity is that we need to be paying our dogs comparably. How hard is he working and are we treating him fairly? So everything is relative, right? How hard is he working depends on a lot of things, like how familiar is he with the behavior? How familiar is he with the environment? How familiar is he with you? The other thing that's relative is the value of the treat. Is it high value to him? Is it medium value to him? Is it low value? Everything is relative, but that's one of the reasons we need to play this game to make sure that we're always paying him how well he deserves. So in terms of knowing your dog's value system with the food, you want to think in terms of high value, medium value, low value. And I definitely suggest writing these down either on your phone or in a piece of paper because you're definitely going to want to add and subtract from the list as you go. Each category is going to have about 3 to 5 dog treats and it's going to add as you go. The longer you have your dog, the longer you're playing this game, the bigger the list and more efficient the list is. The next thing you need to know is how do we play this game? How do we decide what is a high value treat? Are we just handing the dog food and that's it? No, there is a strategy to playing this game, and the first is use it within its context, and that means that you're taking the dog out into a challenging environment and using a treat that you speculate is going to be high value. So that could be a hot dog, that could be the chicken, that could be a tuna. And in a moment, we're going to talk about which treats to use. But for right now, just think about the environment. Where do I need to take my dog that's probably going to be pretty challenging? And where can I practice this? On the other hand, if you're just practicing in your living room with the behavior that you've been doing for 2, 3, 5 days, you could probably start off using something that you speculate is a low value treat. So when I'm taking the dogs into an environment, I always bring a lot of different treats just on the off chance that one of them fails. And I'm always going to gauge its efficiency. When you're practicing this at the pier, for example, and there's a barking dog walking across the street, you might offer a chicken and he might whip his head around and completely ignore the dog altogether. Or he's going to eat the chicken and move on with his life really fast. And if he's moving on or ignoring you again, even after he gobbled up the food, that's usually indication that the chicken isn't valuable enough. It was cool enough to eat, but not power enough to maintain his attention. So then maybe you try a hot dog and see if that is more effective. This time he decides to gobble up the hot dog and then maintains that eye contact with you to see what else he can do for you in order to get more of that hot dog. That's a good indication that the hot dog is more valuable than the chicken. Now, in addition to having your dogs focus when you give that treat, another thing that you can be looking for is how much are they licking their lips? What is their conditioned emotional response? Do they start panting and do a little dance for you afterwards? Is their tail wagging a whole lot? Maybe if you have a young puppy, they kind of gobbled the treat right out of your hand, and that's a really good indication that it was yummy and scrumptious. Now, obviously, that's not something I recommend. It's not something that I condone. I don't want our puppies mouthing on us that much. But especially if they're new and they're learning to be gentle with you, this is a good indication that it's worth it and it's valuable. Use it to your advantage. Now, if you're practicing this in your living room and it's day 5 of teaching your puppy to sit, then you're probably okay with just using a low value treat. So this would be the time to try cereal. I love to try Cheerios. You can use popcorn. You can use fruits like apples. And like I said, in a moment, we're going to give you a whole list of treats that you can try. But I definitely suggest lowering the value of the food if it's a behavior that they've been doing a lot already. So the more proficient they are in it, the easier it is for them. Therefore, the lower the value you can afford to give them. and always paying our dogs comparably. If they're working very hard, we want to pay them very well. If they're working mediocre, we want to pay them mediocre. If they're not working very hard at all, if it's relatively easy because they've been doing something for a very long time, then maybe we're not paying them as high either. Ultimately, we want to fade out the treats of certain behaviors. So it's not a matter of getting rid of food altogether. It's just a matter of getting rid of food for certain behaviors. And if you're still paying high for all of those things, it's going to be really hard to get rid of treats altogether for, say, a sit. Now, remember that when you're giving these treats, they're really tiny, small, and soft. And it's not about how large they are. It's about how easily are they coming to the dog and how good do they smell, right? The stinkier the treat, the more valuable it is, usually. And so when we're practicing with food, I like to start off with the peanut butters and with the popcorns, the ones that have that really strong odor. And then I might bring it down into what I speculate to be the low values, like an apple or a carrot or a pea. And starting off with things that you already have in your kitchen. Please do not run out to the grocery store and buy $100 worth of food. You do not need to do that. Just start with the crackers that you already have sitting in the pantry, and especially the ingredients that are already in the back of your dog's kibble. So if your kibble says it has apples in it or it has pumpkin in it, those are the good foods to start off with, because you know your dog already likes them to an extent. Now you're just getting a little bit more nuance to find out how much he likes them. So you can use pumpkin, you can use cheese, you can use hot dogs, you can use popcorn, you can use Cheerios, peanut butter, all of the proteins, the tunas, the salmons. And in the description box below, I've written an entire list of things that I've tried with dogs, and I've ordered them in what I find to be generally their value. So if it's a high value treat, if it's a medium value treat, and if it's a low value treat. Obviously, it's going to be individualized to you, but it's a good foundation spot just to kind of know what I find to be the rankings. A good idea is to always start off with frozen food, especially if your dog has had ice cubes in the past and you know he likes the ice cubes. Just freeze treats. What I'll do is I'll take a plate, cut up a piece of banana, put the banana treats on the plate, and then pop them in the freezer, and then you get little banana treats. You can also freeze carrots. Carrots are really good for teething puppies because they like to munch and it feels good. You can also get an ice cube tray, fill it up with water, and then pop a little medium value treat in the middle, and then you get an ice cube treat, ice cube surrounding the treat, and that's really fun because then they get to break it and sneak out the food. The other thing is, you do not need to go to Petco and to PetSmart and spend $14 on a bag of treat. Generally speaking, those $14 that you spent are more valuable than the treats were to begin with, because the more accessible a treat is, the less value it has. And so if you go and you get a giant bag of Train Me treats, you know, you might get a quarter of the way through before your dog decides that it's no longer valuable and it's not working as well as it did before, if at all. If you're already in this boat where you already know that your dog's medium treats have lost a lot of power, then I recommend putting them in the pantry and stocking them away for a couple of weeks. And I promise you, in 3-4 weeks again, when you reintroduce it, it's going to spark that excitability again, and your dog will be interested yet again. The other thing that I like to use is broth, or like the tuna juice or chicken breast juice. I'll squeeze that onto a piece of bread. Or with broth, for example, I'll actually put that in a squirt bottle and then squirt that on like an apple, or squirt it on, I don't know, peas. And that automatically takes that low value treat like a pea and makes it just a little bit more enticing because it's got the chicken smell of it. Please remember that your dog can have an allergic reaction. This activity is really meant to be taken over a week, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 months, the entire dog's life is when this activity is meant to happen. So if you were trying to test 15 foods in one day, that's really not safe, because if your dog has an allergic reaction, you won't know which food caused the reaction. So it's important that you're spacing this out, and remember that the food can change. So if last week the chicken was really high, 3 weeks from now, maybe it's not as high anymore. So his taste buds can change, his preferences can change. Definitely the more accessible something is, the less value it has. So maintaining its value is going to be important to you, and maintaining your knowledge of the dog's preferences is going to be valuable to you. So remember, you're not trying to get rid of treats for your dog's entire life. You're just trying to fade them out of certain behaviors. If they've been doing sit for a whole year, you may not necessarily need to feed a regular dog treat just for any old-fashioned sit around the house. You want to pay them comparably. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys next video. Bye.